Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Alter Your Health podcast. I'm Dr. Susanna Alter. I'm a naturopathic doctor who specializes in whole food, plant-based nutrition and mind-body medicine. And hi there. It's been a while since I've been here on the podcast. I know Dr. Ben has been taking over the podcast since I've been in maternity leave. But this is really the first time I've been back to the podcast since the birth of our beautiful baby girl, Grace. And this episode, I'm going to be talking about the 10 whole food plant-based benefits that I've witnessed in my own body since being whole food plant-based for over 5 years now. And this episode is really inspired from Dr. Ben's last couple of episodes where he was talking about veganism versus whole food plant-based eating and also why he chooses to eat a whole food plant-based diet. And I thought, you know what, it's been a while since I've really shared my personal account of whole food plant-based eating. But the intention is not just for it to be totally just me sharing my story, but to talk about really the science behind why I've experienced these benefits in my own body. But first, a little bit of backstory, because the truth is that even though I feel like I am in just like 100% healthy Susanna right now, I wasn't always this healthy. About 11 years ago now, when I was just finishing up my time in undergrad, I suddenly became very ill with some very mysterious chronic symptoms. And the main symptoms that came up during that period were chronic digestive issues, chronic joint pain, lots of skin issues. And what was interesting, I'd say the most difficult part of it was the joint pain. It felt very debilitating. And what was very difficult is that all of the medical doctors that I was visiting, none of them could figure out what was at the root cause. All of my blood markers, all of the imaging was completely normal. So they were all scratching their heads, and it made me feel like this weird kind of, mystery illness patient. But I'm so happy to say that none of those symptoms are an issue now. And my story is not like, oh, and then I went plant-based and all those symptoms went away overnight. I certainly had a period of time where I had cleaned up my diet with the help of some kind of functional doctors. They kind of pointed me towards like the paleo diet and kind of nourishing traditions, Sally Fallon's style, kind of, lots of eggs and lots of meat and lots of bone broth and all of these things. And I did experience some amount of healing. I think just simply taking out all of the processed junk food out of my diet, all the alcohol and other things that weren't serving me helped to some extent. But I will say, it really kind of just got me to this place of suboptimal functioning where I felt like I really had to watch what I was eating. I really felt like I wasn't free in my body. My digestive symptoms would still pop up from time to time. My joint pain would pop up from time to time. So I was not in an optimal state of health, let's just say that. So kind of fast forward 5 years, I went to grad school and, was once again kind of, functioning kind of suboptimally health-wise throughout my graduate degree. And it wasn't until my last year in school when I was in cardiology class, when there was one sentence on one slide of a cardiology presentation on the topic of atherosclerosis, where there was this point saying that whole food plant-based nutrition, kind of studied by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, has been shown to reverse atherosclerosis in, study participants. And it's interesting because I look back at that class and I think how, it was just one sentence on one slide out of this, 100 slideshow, right? It was just this one teeny little bullet point. But why was it not totally emphasized for that entire lesson, let alone that entire course? Here we have a way of eating that can actually reverse atherosclerosis, like the number one risk factor of heart attack, yet we're spending all this time talking about all these other therapeutics for heart health When really the answer is here in this one bullet point: whole food plant-based eating reverses atherosclerosis. There's nothing else. There's no other way of eating. There's no medicine. There's no supplement that can reverse atherosclerosis. Only this way of eating can. So anyway, that was like the first little hint of the power of whole food plant-based eating, for me at least. And then a few weeks later, I'm so grateful for a couple of doctors. Actually, I'll shout them out here. Dr. Daniel Chung and Dr. Russell Mars, who are two naturopathic doctors based out of Portland. They hosted a showing of What the Health, and that really kind of highlighted more of whole food plant-based nutrition for me. And so Dr. Ben and I decided to make the shift over to whole food plant-based eating about 5-6 years ago. And ever since, oh my gosh, I have to say, it has been the best decision I've ever made for my health. So the 10 whole food plant-based benefits that I've received over the last 6 years. First, starting off with the deep healing, the final resolution of those weird, mysterious symptoms that I could never really get to the root of, right? So starting off with my digestive symptoms, I had just kind of gut inflammation, bowel issues, mostly kind of tended towards constipation, but I mean, just gut pain, abdominal pain that wasn't explained by anything. And that cleared up probably within 2 months. I remember 2 months after eating whole food plant-based, I realized like, wow, I don't get that occasional abdominal pain anymore. And my bowel movements were completely regulated. So normal, so great. For those of you who are whole food plant-based eaters out there, I think you know how great bowel habits are once we shift to this lifestyle, right? The fiber. So why is this? Why is it that digestive health is optimized with whole food plant-based eating? It all comes down to optimizing our microbial diversity in our gut microbiome. Because when we have an optimally diverse microbiome, what happens is that we have all sorts of beneficial microbes that are able to flourish, and they create these wonderful anti-inflammatory byproducts, short-chain fatty acids and other anti-inflammatory compounds that help to keep our gut lining nice and tight. And they create this nice protective biofilm that essentially creates this very strong, resilient barrier from whatever we're putting in our gut tube, right? So even if we are exposed to some pathogens from time to time or some toxins from time to time, our gut won't be affected, it won't be impacted in such a major way versus if we have a very kind of fragile, inflamed gut lining, which was certainly the case in my case. And so that's why really optimizing the microbiome does translate to overall gut health. It comes down to really creating that nice, strong, resilient gut lining and reducing inflammation in that environment. So having a diverse microbiome really does, it helps us to restore that healthy gut lining. So the next benefit that I experienced was also no more joint pain. And for me, that was huge because, as I was kind of, functioning suboptimally with my health in grad school, I would get this joint pain from time to time, and it drove me nuts because it was like, oh, I know it's something that I'm eating, and I would get into this very kind of obsessive way of thinking about my lifestyle, like, oh, what did I do to get this flare and joint pain? And the answers still weren't really there, right? But the joint pain is very much related to the digestive issues, because the reason why my joint pain completely resolved with going whole food plant-based was because with the healing of my gut lining, I was no longer getting symptoms of systemic inflammation. Because what happens when the gut lining is inflamed, and we might want to use the term like leaky gut syndrome or hyperpermeability of the gut lining. What happens when we have a very fragile, inflamed, and leaky gut is that we set the stage for systemic inflammation, because with this leaky gut, essentially what can happen is that larger food molecules or toxins or pathogens can actually make their way through the gut lining into the bloodstream and also into some lymphoid tissue, what's called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and really activate our immune system in an unhealthy way so that we are stimulating kind of a overabundance of the inflammatory response in the body, right? The inflammatory response is actually our immune system trying to keep us healthy, trying to, keep foreign invaders at bay. But when we have a leaky gut and kind of everything is crossing over through the gut lining into our bloodstream, that's a lot for the immune system to handle. So there's a lot of inflammation, and that systemic inflammation will affect whatever tissues in the body are most susceptible. For me, it's my joints. For other people, it might be skin. It might be their, neurological functioning, brain fog. The list goes on of the different kind of symptoms that can come up with systemic inflammation. But so for me, whole food plant-based eating really healed the joint pain for good. Once again, because it healed my digestive gut lining for good. The third big benefit that I received was healing of my skin health. And along with the digestive issues and the joint pain, whenever I had flares in these areas, I would also have flares in my skin, and I had adult acne. And so this is very much connected to, of course, the healing of the digestive system as well. As I talked about, that systemic inflammation that can occur, while it targeted my joints, it also targeted my skin. And so I experienced complete resolution of that acne problem when I healed my gut with whole food plant-based nutrition. Also, interestingly, some of you might have heard of a condition called Kerasis Polaris, which are these little red bumps. Typically, they show up on the back of your arm or around your buttocks area or your thigh area. And Kerasis Polaris is actually due to nutritional deficiencies, most commonly vitamin A or folate. And it's funny because when I went whole food plant-based, I also was drinking celery juice very regularly. And I thought that it was the celery juice that was healing the Kerasis Polaris. But then I stopped drinking celery juice, stayed on whole food plant-based lifestyle, and it's still totally cleared up. So it's funny because Kerasis Polaris is actually, it's one of the skin conditions that I get the most questions about through my Instagram account, because I think like 4 years ago, I made some post about how drinking celery juice helped me heal my Kerasis Polaris. And so many people messaged me about that. But the truth is, it's really the whole food plant-based eating that really corrected any kind of underlying nutritional deficiency and cleared up the Kerasis Polaris. Okay, so that was number 3. Moving on to number 4, energy. So chronic fatigue was also an issue that I had during this chronic health period of my life. And gosh, I mean, I feel like even right now as a woman who's like 3 months postpartum, I still feel like my energy is really great, even though I'm not getting the ideal amount of sleep, of course, right? But there's never a lack of energy anymore. And that could be connected to like a lot of different pathways in the body. But let's just talk about the most obvious one, which is our metabolic health and efficiency, because our metabolism is what converts the fuel that we're eating into energy that can then be used in the body. And that's the energy that we feel throughout our day as well. And whole food plant-based eating heals the metabolism. It creates an efficient metabolism, because what we're doing here, and we have so many episodes where we talk about this more in depth, so I should be kind of referring you to all of our different podcast episodes. But if you've been following us for a while, you know that whole food plant-based eating heals the metabolism because we're focusing on carb-rich foods, clean sources of carbohydrates, and we're relating to the fat-rich foods as garnishes. And so the whole food plant-based diet is a carb-rich diet. And that's the kind of diet that really heals the metabolism, because our body's designed to run off of carbohydrates preferentially. Yes, our body also burns fat into energy as well. But whenever there are carbs around, the body's preferentially going to burn that into energy because it's so much more efficient. And so when we think of the metabolism as this like campfire, that's my favorite analogy, we want to provide that campfire with its favorite fuel to keep it roaring nice and bright, right? And for our body, the preferred fuel is carbohydrates for that campfire. It's like nice, clean, dry wood, and not wet wood or not styrofoam or anything like that. And when we eat whole food plant-based, we're providing that campfire with the optimal fuel sources. So, yes, natural byproduct of that is feeling very energetic. All right, and then the fifth point I have here, and this is still kind of residual healing from my chronic illness period in life, was that when I switched to whole food plant-based eating, it helped to heal my food sensitivities and ultimately really my relationship with food. Because up until that point, I had a lot of fear around eating certain foods, from following the paleo diet, from following these kind of I've got quotes here, autoimmune diets or anti-inflammatory diets where they say grains are bad and beans are bad and nightshades are bad. There are a lot of plants that I was afraid to eat. But when I really embraced whole food plant-based eating and I started introducing more and more plants into my diet, but here's the key, I was also leaving out the truly inflammatory foods like the eggs and the dairy and the other animal products and all the processed grains and processed sugars and things like that. My microbiome was able to heal, my gut lining was able to heal, and the food sensitivities were no longer an issue. And of course, that didn't happen overnight. It was a very gradual process for me, but it's been so liberating being able to introduce all these different plant foods that I used to be so afraid of. I used to sit down at every meal just so terrified that whatever I was going to eat in that meal was going to set off some kind of a flare. And if it did, then I would spend hours thinking like, oh, was it the brown rice, or was it the broccoli, or was it the this, was it the that? So much fear around food. And of course, then my nervous system was on hyperdrive because of all of that stress. But the thing is, here I am saying I'm eating whole food plant-based. I feel as though not only have I really healed food sensitivities, but I've healed my relationship with food because I no longer have that stress around food and what I'm eating. Some people could argue, well, hey, Susanna, what you're eating right now is restrictive. It's a restrictive lifestyle. But how I feel now compared to how I felt then is so different. I feel so free in how I'm eating right now, whereas before I felt so limited and so restricted because it's like, oh, I shouldn't eat too much fruit. Oh, I shouldn't eat too many potatoes. Carbs are bad. Grains are bad. Just there was stress around that. In this lifestyle, I'm actively choosing not to eat animal products and processed foods because I know that I feel so much greater health with whole food plant-based eating. But that's not to say that I'm actually afraid of those foods. From time to time, yeah, I might eat something processed. From time to time, maybe some animal products even slip in. And it doesn't scare me. It doesn't throw me for a loop. I'm just choosing not to eat those foods because I prefer not to. And so the energy is very different. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I talk a little bit about my pregnancy journey at the end here. Okay, so the sixth benefit. The next benefits I'm covering are kind of benefits that I wasn't expecting, but it was a pleasant surprise after the deeper healing happened. And so this next one is that my menstrual cycle became much more graceful and regular. Became way more regular, like every 28 days and much less painful. The reason why this happens for whole food plant-based eaters is there's several reasons, but the most important thing is that whole food plant-based eating helps to regulate hormones through supporting liver health. And you hear us talk about this in all of our liver episodes. But, when our liver is freed up with, less work that it has to do by, it's hard not to go on tangents for every single one of these points, but the liver is responsible for so many duties in our body, right? It's needs to metabolize and helps us to digest fats. It helps us to detoxify any kind of environmental toxins we're exposed to. And so when we eat whole food plant-based and we lower the amount of toxicity coming in and we lower the amount of fat coming in, frees up a lot of energy so that the liver can kind of work on its backlog of toxins it's trying to metabolize out of the system. And hormones, that's another one of the liver's big role. The liver is responsible for metabolizing hormones. And so we see in the case of sluggish liver, when this liver is just like bogged down with so much work between detoxification and fat digestion, not to mention all the other 500 things it has to do. One of the things that it can kind of put on the back burner is hormonal regulation, hormonal metabolism. And so that's why when we heal our liver, support our liver with whole food plant-based eating, which is a naturally detoxifying way of eating, we see that hormones come into balance. And for me, the result of that was more regular menses and no more period pain, no more period cramping, unless I was having some stress around that cycle. Stress is also something that can definitely cause period pain for sure. Okay, so moving on to my next benefit that I experienced, that was a pleasant surprise, was just a more robust immune system. And I'd say, when I was in grad school, I experienced not only kind of, I'd probably get sick a couple times a year, which isn't totally a sign of a suppressed immune system or anything. But the other big issue that was related to the immune system was that for the first time in my life, I had seasonal allergies, which is a sign of an immune imbalance as well. And since eating whole food plant-based, I can't remember the last time I actually had an allergic response to even mold or seasonal allergies. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago when I made the switch to whole food plant-based eating, and also probably get sick once a year, which actually is a very healthy sign of a healthfully functioning immune system. We're actually designed to get sick, about once a year, once every 18 months or so. And it's actually, a way that our immune system updates itself and kind of helps to cleanse the body. So getting sick is not a bad thing. We don't want to be getting sick all the time. And if we actually haven't had a cold for like 3 or 4 years, it might be a sign that your immune system needs a little bit of support. But anyway, the reason why whole food plant-based eating helps to balance the immune system is because we're actually taking out a lot of the kind of allergenic food sources, right? Like dairy and eggs and stuff, which can really kind of throw the balance out of whack for the immune system. But we're also providing the body with such deep nutrition. We think of zinc, we think of vitamin A, we think of, all the antioxidants, we think of selenium. All these nutrients really support the immune system. So this is a very nutrient-dense way of living, and our immune system loves it for that reason. Okay, the next benefit is that I love my hair now. I think, I never really had hair issues, but I will say I always had the goal of growing my hair longer. And for the longest time, I just couldn't get it past a certain point. It would dry out. It just didn't seem to want to grow past a certain point. And I'm happy to say I've surpassed that point now. It's I actually just got my hair cut, but you can see it's almost at like my lower ribs now. And so that for me is kind of a superficial goal, but having good hair health is a sign that the rest of your body is also in balance because, hair is not a vital organ. If we have nutritional deficiencies, it's probably going to show up in the least important organs in our body, right? Our skin, our nails, our hair. And so if we have good, healthy hair that's growing at a healthy rate, it's such a good sign that we have a good nutrient status in the body, we've got a good circulation in the body, that we've got a good metabolic rate also. And we think of whole food plant-based eating and how and why it supports hair health. Well, this diet is so rich in all the nutrients that hair needs for hair growth and regeneration. And for all the other contributing factors that I just talked about for hair health, circulation, metabolic health, all that good stuff. So Very happy with the hair results. And then this next portion is most recently why I've been so grateful for making the transition to whole food plant-based eating and being consistent with this lifestyle too. And these next 2 points are related to fertility and birth and postpartum recovery. And I want to kind of introduce this portion of the episode by saying that I very much realize that fertility and birth outcomes, birth experiences, birth stories, and also like postpartum recovery, while lifestyle and how we take care of ourselves plays a huge role in the ease and grace that we can have with our reproductive health, I know that it's not the only factor. There's so many other factors that play into fertility, when we get pregnant, how the birth goes, how the recovery goes. So I'm not here to say like, oh, this was all very easy and graceful for me just because I'm whole food plant-based or anything like that. I feel so blessed overall that our journey has been pretty easy and pretty graceful with the birth of our little Grace. So I just want to kind of put it out there too, because I know that there are couples that are probably like they're really doing their best and they're probably like really nourishing themselves really, really well. But there are other factors that come into play. But the truth is that Ben and I had, a very easy time getting pregnant. And we're just so blessed and so grateful that that was the case. And I do feel like, as more and more research is coming out about fertility, it's certainly clear that the increasing amount of toxicity in our environment certainly isn't helping with fertility rates. So whole food plant-based eating can really help in that regard because it is a naturally detoxifying way of living. It supports the liver, which supports hormonal regulation and supports healthy fertility. And so that's something I'm very grateful for, that I had these 5 years of whole food plant-based eating under my belt before we even, tried to start a family. But another reason why whole food plant-based eating can very much support fertility is simply because it's such deep nutrition. It's so nourishing for the body. And, being pregnant requires so much nutrition, right? Not only how we're fueling ourselves every day while we're pregnant, but it's really helpful to have that bank of nutrition already in the body. And so I'm really, really grateful that, once again, eating whole food plant-based in that preconception phase really helped for a more graceful pregnancy where just no complications. Everything was very, very healthy. I will say that, of course, I experienced some of the symptoms of all the hormonal fluctuations that happen with pregnancy. I had some very bad morning sickness and very bad food aversions. And this is why I'm happy that I had previously already come to this very peaceful place with my relationship with food, because I made the very conscious effort that, okay, I'm going to try to eat whole food plant-based to the best of my ability, but I realized that it's okay to use some of these non-whole plant-based foods as, support, as a crutch to get me through the most the worst nausea days, the worst morning sickness days. So there was a great deal of flexibility for me in my relationship with the foods I was eating throughout pregnancy. And that helps promote more peace, right? Less stress around food. And so once again, I'm very grateful for the health that whole food plant-based eating provides. And I'm grateful that I feel free enough in this relationship with my food that it's okay for me to make exceptions from time to time. But also, just kind of wrapping up here, now looking back on the birth story, I'm not going to go over the birth story right now. It's way too long. Dr. Ben already kind of did. But I actually look back at it and I feel as though from this perspective, it was like, I'm so grateful went the way it went. We ended up needing some medical intervention to get my contractions going as a first-time mom whose labor started with just water breaking followed by no contractions. So we needed some intervention to help get the contractions going. But once the contractions were going, the rest of it, the pushing, the delivery, everything was very graceful. I'm just so grateful for all of that. And I do feel so grateful for the health of my body. For anyone who's ever, you know, birthed a baby or their partner's birthed a baby, you know how much of a miracle the whole thing is. But I've been so grateful also how easy my recovery process has been. I feel like I bounced back way quicker than I even imagined. And I really attribute a lot of it to my nutritional kind of foundation, the bank of nutrition I had in my body, and also the ability to stay active throughout pregnancy as well, which was a great blessing, I think, for keeping my body strong in this whole journey. But anyway, I think after really reflecting more on the whole perinatal phase that I'm still in, truly, I have so much more gratitude for the nutrition that whole food plant-based eating has brought. And I'll say balanced whole food plant-based nutrition, right? That's always the key, making sure you truly are getting all the nutrients that you need in your whole food plant-based diet. And that's what we're passionate about, is helping people really ensure that they are getting all the nutrition that their body needs in a plant-based diet. But yeah, just kind of really overwhelmed by all the gratitude that I'm feeling towards this lifestyle. And it's beautiful because this is really just what nature provides us with, right? It's like such a beautiful gift from the earth. And yeah, so I'm trying to keep this episode as short as possible. I'm going to wrap things up right now. But thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to reflect on just the health that I'm very grateful for. And just a few announcements about what's new at Alter Health, because we have been changing up a few things. We're actually just wrapping up a whole food plant-based challenge this week. And as I've said, we're really passionate about supporting individuals and really optimizing their plant-based eating so that it's truly serving them and it's truly helping them to achieve their health goals as quickly as possible. Because as I've said a few times, eating plant-based is not inherently healthy. There are some pitfalls that people can fall into. And so how we like to support individuals are, we've got a few different offerings. We've got nutritional analysis one-on-ones. And this is where I'm really able to actually see what you're eating and really create your individualized meal plan to get you to your goals as soon as possible. We also have our cleanses that happen quarterly. So every 3 months we offer a cleanse, and our next cleanse is right around the corner. It's starting on January 15th, but I believe the cutoff is actually January 13th. So that's like really soon. We also have our meal guide membership, which is only $11 a month, and you get a weekly meal guide and also a monthly support call with us. And what else? We've got our Thrive On Plants. Of course, our Thrive On Plants, which is really the most comprehensive education that you can receive around eating balanced whole food plant-based nutrition, where you can learn how to become your own healer, learn how to give yourself your own nutritional analysis, and to really create those sustained, lasting whole food plant-based benefits. Because if anything hasn't become what am I trying to say? The thing that's become more and more and more clear and obvious to me the longer I've stayed on this lifestyle is that the blessings just keep coming the longer that we stay on this lifestyle. Consistency is truly what brings just the best healing results on this lifestyle. So we love to support you in making this a truly sustainable, truly joyful, truly balanced way of living for you. So just reach out if you have any questions about any of those offerings. But we hope to see you next week for another episode on the Alter Your Health podcast. And thanks so much for listening. All right, everyone. Bye for now.